Hello everybody, welcome back. This is new video and we're painting Deathleaper finally. So we're gonna get cracking on this one. Now straight away we are I'm airbrushing the claws, talons, teeth, anything like that. So this is a colour scheme that's inspired by the xenomorphs from Alien. And in my head, like these Tyranids, this hive fleet has evolved into all their cutting weapons and claws and talons and teeth and everything. They've evolved them into being metallic. So that's how I'm justifying this in my head anyway. But it looks really cool. I like how it ends up looking, and also it provides a little bit of differentiation between all the other hive fleets that you see out there. So a bit of metallic on some Tyranids. I think it looks cool. So it's scale color black metal. And it's obviously I'm airbrushing it on here. It's thinned down using scale color thinner. I would recommend using scale color thinner if you do use the scale color paints through an airbrush. They've got some different medium in there which doesn't seem to work particularly well with any of the other thinners that I've used. Yeah, so this is scale color thinner with scale color black metal. You'll also see that down at the bottom of the model, I've also covered it in cling film as well. This is it just stops like the oil from my fingers rubbing off the paint and the primer and everything, so I have to pre-prime it again or something like that. But yeah, another thing to know about when you're airbrushing metallics. Airbrushing metallics is really good, and they go on very smooth. You have to thin them a lot more than normal paint, so this is probably 1 or 2 drops of paint to 4 or 5 drops of thinner in the airbrush bowl. I do mix them. I always mix metallics in those little airbrush mixing tins. Always, absolutely. There's absolutely zero reason not to, because you've got to make sure that you get the consistency of the paint right, and also then you're not kind of forcing paints down into the needle when you're stirring and mixing it, particularly with metallics. You don't want that. And this is being sprayed at about 20, 22, something like that psi. I tend to turn the airbrush pressure down a little bit when I'm using metallics, because you don't want too high a pressure generally when you're airbrushing, because the pressure of the airbrush, and then it sucks the paint through, so it doesn't blow the paint out. It sucks the paint out of the bowl and then into the line of the air. So if you have too high a pressure, it's pushing all those paint pigments into areas of the paintbrush where it doesn't normally get pushed into, so like little crevices, and it gets caught up in things. So if you're doing that with metallic paints as well, you'll get metallic flecks just kind of caught in areas where it doesn't need to be. So if you just lower the pressure a little bit, you'll find that the metallic flecks will flow better out of the airbrush. Yeah, try that, and that's the same with just regular paints as well. Just drop your pressure. I think you might be a bit surprised. Anyway, so this is a little highlight. So we put the black metal pretty much everywhere. We weren't trying to do it from a certain angle to leave black in recesses or anything like that. We put the black metal everywhere. We covered the claws and the talons and everything, and then now this is Model Air Chrome, which is a beautiful paint. This has been thinned down with Vallejo thinner though, because it's a Vallejo paint. So we've thinned it down with Vallejo thinner, and we're picking out the top of the claws, and then we're leaving a little bit of a section in the center of the claw, and then picking out the bottom of the claw. So it's just a little bit of modulation in there for interest, really. It's not exactly accurate. I mean, you can kind of argue that it might be, depending on what the light is like in the environment that this model is in. But you can see there the claw is like very bright at the top, and then it goes darker in the center, and then it's very bright at the bottom again. So it's just those 2 little bits. So this is the next part, and you don't have to be neat with a lot of this, because what we're going to do is we're going to give it an oil wash in a little while. So this is Vallejo turquoise with black mixed into it. So it's kind of like Inky by Darkness, something like that. or is it Stegodon Scale Green? Maybe that's a little bit too bright, but yeah, something like Incubi Darkness. If you've got Vallejo paints, this is also very close to Dark Sea Blue. I don't know why I didn't use Dark Sea Blue. I think I had some turquoise on the palette and I just kind of mixed in a little bit of black with it. But yeah, it's Dark Sea Blue or turquoise with a little bit of black into it, so it just desaturates. And it's interesting when you're painting Tyranids as well. You kind of got to justify yourself, like what all the parts are. So you have the fleshy parts, you have the carapace, and then you've got like the chitinous or the chitinous bone parts around, like on the chest plate. You've got those. You've got the rib cage on there. Like what color and what material is that chest piece, the chest plate, and things like that. So you've got to kind of justify yourself, or justify to yourself what all these colors and what all these different materials actually are. But I've tried to do everything turquoise, and then all the carapace and chitin is this kind of dark red, which is Vallejo Black Red, which is a beautiful colour. It's a really, really cool colour. It's a nice dark red. It's a very, very good starting point for when you're painting red, and you want a dark red, because like you can put, if you started with like Mephiston red, then you kind of go up and you start highlighting and you start pushing into the oranges. Well, I don't want to do that here. I want to kind of almost stop at red. So that's why this black red's really good. And then when you're putting it over black as well, it stays quite dark. Now, this is where I get a little bit carried away. Now, you don't have to be as neat as I'm being here. I look like I'm starting highlighting. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just start highlighting some of this with the turquoise. So this is just pure turquoise. And I'm kind of going, okay, well, catch edges and things like that. You don't need to do that. Just kind of cover everything with turquoise, get it all done, leave a few recesses, and then the same with the carapace as well. Just kind of go in with some of the Mephiston red and any surface which is facing upwards, just kind of catch with Mephiston red. It's not going to matter. The painting part is going to come after we've given it the oil wash. Now the oil wash was the idea behind the oil wash is that I was going to do the metallics. And I wanted to airbrush the metallics on because it gives a very, very smooth metallic finish. But then I had the idea of I wanted to use the oil wash over, because oil washes over metallics looks great, right? If you've never tried it, try it. It looks brilliant. So oil washes over metallics look really good. Like the oil kind of, it latches onto some of the metallic flecks and just kind of settles into around them sometimes. And it just has like a really nice effect. So I wanted to do an oil wash over the metallics, and then as I started painting the skin, I was like, well, what I could do is I could put the oil wash over the whole thing. So what all these highlights, you don't have to be neat at all. And in fact, one thing you could do is you could take the highlights one step further, and you could be really rough with like the next highlight. So the turquoise, the next highlight that I use on the turquoise is turquoise with a little bit of ice yellow mixed into it. So if you were to kind of sketch out some of those highlight placements as well, then the oil wash would almost soften and pull all those highlights together once you put it on. So that's an interesting idea. You could do that as well. You could be really loose and sketchy as I'm being here, much more than I was when I started the turquoise. But you can just be really kind of sketchy and okay, this area here needs to be highlighted because it's catching the light. This area here is a surface which is facing upwards, so this needs to catch the light. Kind of sketch it all out, throw it all on there, and then the oil wash will soften everything down, pull it all together, and then you can address the details after that. It should look quite cool. So you can try that as well, or you can do what I'm doing here and do turquoise and then red and give it the oil wash. The oil wash which I am using is Winsor & Newton. They're the only oils I've got. I've only got Winsor & Newton oils, so I haven't got any experience using any others like Abtalong 502 or anything like that. And then I use this Bob Ross odorless thinner as well, because it's Bob Ross, right? If you if you want to do something well, use Bob Ross, and then it's clearly going to benefit you, right? This is a massive brush, and I'm sloshing it all over the model. Like this hasn't been varnished or anything. It hasn't got gloss varnish on there at all or anything like that. I am staining and filtering every surface on here, so I'm sloshing it all on there. I'm not really kind of rubbing it off particularly. I'm just trying to make sure that every surface is covered sufficiently with the same coat. And then when we get to the metallic as well, you'll see that we just kind of drag it off the tip. So I'm going to paint it onto the claw, and then just drag it away from the tip. So we'll paint it all on there, and then you'll see the kind of the metallic shine through, and then the oil will settle in, but I'm pulling it away from that tip as well. I want to keep that tip that we highlighted with the chrome, I want to keep that nice and bright as a nice kind of focal point. Like this is the bit of the lictor which is going to kill you, that kind of thing. Like, so I wanted to keep that tip nice and bright. So trying to pull a little bit of the, and you'll see it on this bit here, like we put the oil all the way on there, and then we'll pull the pools away from the end like that. So there's still little bits in the recesses, but just not very much. So that's basically the first part of the model. So that's all the atmosphere and everything done on the model. Now we leave that to dry. I left that to dry overnight because it was quite late when I did that oil wash. So I left it to dry overnight and woke up the next morning, gave it a coat of matte varnish, just Vallejo matte varnish. It's the Mecha matte varnish from Vallejo. It's in the kind of slightly larger bottles. And then we're going to start the actual painting now. Again, I get carried away a little bit, but like I like painting, so it's all fun and it's nice. I'm actually enjoying just sitting down and painting at the moment, rather than I've been rushing around trying to do little bits recently, and not really been sitting down and just painting for like extended periods of time. So this was quite nice, just kind of sitting down and working on this Deathleaper. And I could have spent some more time on it as well, just kind of refining some of the areas. But I've also trying a little bit here. We've got the wet palette in shot as well. I have got a palette cam, but it doesn't seem to have that good a quality. I have to have it quite low and close because it doesn't have a zoom, it's just a webcam. So I thought I'd try it like this for this video and see how it goes. So we've got turquoise down in the bottom left, that's pure turquoise. So all these, you can see the shine on them, that's because they've got probably 50% water in all the drops of paint there. So you got pure turquoise in the bottom left. Then above that is turquoise with a tiny dot of ice yellow in it. Above that is probably 50% turquoise, 50% ice yellow, and then to the right hand side of that, so top right, is ice yellow with a good chunk of turquoise in it, and then bottom left is ice yellow with a tiny dot of turquoise in it. So you just got like a transition going through all of those, and then you'll see that I'm kind of going and adding and picking which bit of kind of turquoise and which bit of tonality that I want. So if I want it a little bit brighter, so you can see that highlight there is almost a top highlight, but I was only using turquoise. Whereas when I come further down the arm towards the elbow, I want to really push that mid-tone. So when you're highlighting things like this, you want to leave room for the highlights, and by that I mean if I keep the shadow and the mid-tone there, and I just put a tiny highlight on with like the next colour, then obviously the next colour after that has to be even smaller. So one of the ways that you can get this kind of modulation of lighting and draw focus to where you want it to be on a model is to over highlight certain areas in your head. So you're putting more mid-tone down, and then because that mid-tone area is larger, you've then got a larger area to then highlight as well. So this big chunky bicep here that I'm painting on, this is a nice large mid-tone here, which will then, when you then put the highlight on top of that, because the highlight has to be a little bit smaller, then it will be larger than some of the other ones. So I'm trying to make sense. Yeah, so basically you are highlighting more, and you're taking away more of the shadows with the turquoise, and then with the subsequent highlights around this kind of knuckle here, around this elbow join. so that it looks brighter than other areas, because that's going to be where the head is. So the head is going to be at that level, so around the elbows and around this bicep area here. So that's why you can see the highlights kind of being pushed a little bit further there, whereas up at the top of the arm, the highlights pretty much stopped on like the I don't know, that second highlight up sort of thing. So this little highlight here, you see how they're much smaller. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, leave a comment down below and I will try and do a video just on like light placements and how to work those into to highlights and things. In terms of the texture which I'm adding here, there's not a lot of texture being added. I'm trying to keep it. It's a little bit kind of scratchy and scribbly, but it's not overly textured. I don't think the flesh. It's almost like the skin of a human being. Like the skin of a human is not particularly textured. When you see the highlights, it looks quite smooth. When you're zoomed out quite a way, like if this was like a battered chitinous plate sort of thing, then maybe you could add a bit more texture on it. But this, I'm trying to keep this one reasonably smooth, and then all the upwards facing, like a lot of these like knuckles here, nice big. They're really easy to highlight actually, because they're kind of like almost like big chunky balls. So you can just kind of push the highlights, and you can see we're going like quite high on these ones, pushing them towards nearly pure ice yellow on this. And then just coming back in with some areas just to remove some of the shadows and increase that mid-tone again. And because the paint is quite thin, then you can sort of layer it on quite well. But yeah, it's looking quite good. I think I need to almost zoom in a little bit more for you on these videos, because it doesn't look like I'm actually it doesn't look like I'm doing much. Hopefully you can see the marks, and then the commentary as well. Hopefully the commentary is helping as well. But yeah, I think I will. Next time I do a painting video, I'm going to try and zoom in. I've got a few painting videos on the go actually. I've got one that's Lilith Hesperex, so hopefully you'll enjoy the Lilith video. I thought that'd be quite a cool one to do. And then I've got some grey nights to do, which will be much less brush painting and much more kind of airbrushing. Anyway, this is all about Deathleaper. He's looking quite cool, isn't he? Now the face, so this is where we were talking about trying to push the midtones to a higher tonal point, tonal value. This is one where we really are trying to do that, because this is a focal point of the model. And although he's got all these, he's got a lot of detail on his face, and that makes it quite difficult to draw attention and pull that tonality up a little bit. However, he does have a lot of tentacles, so we can help the draw focus point of, like, this is where the head should be, by actually using the tentacles. So we're gonna use a little bit of the tentacle lines to keep the top of the tentacles nice and bright and highlighted quite high, to help draw attention to the center of the face, because like he's got a lot of, I don't know, it'd be quite nice to see somebody paint this one to a different color scheme that I'm doing, to see how much difference and differentiation we can get on the face. Like, because my skin is quite dark, this kind of dark turquoise, you kind of lose a little bit of the facial features maybe, but you can see here we're going to use the tentacles to kind of draw up and keep some focus up towards the top of the tentacles and to the center of the face. So that is some turquoise that we just kind of we added onto the tentacle, and then I thinned it down with a little bit of water on the brush, and then kind of glazed it in towards the top. And then obviously we're just going back in. You'll see we've got another paint on the wet palette, so that is a touch of turquoise in ice yellow, and then a little bit of white just to brighten and desaturate that even further. So that's a highlight that we can use on the face just to push the tonality of the face even higher compared to things like that shoulder and the bicep and things. But hopefully as well you can see here that we're actually highlighting much more. There's not a lot of shadow on some of these tentacles, so they are like tonally, the mid-tone is like a step higher, and then that will help on the final model as well to draw attention to the face as well. Now there are a few more kind of creases and textures on the tentacles than some of the other arms, so you'll see a few like lines here where I'm painting across the tentacle as well to try and give it some texture and keep those creases sort of running within the paint job as well. I'm unbelievably subtle sometimes when I'm painting. I need to stop doing it. I need to be a little bit more harsh. But yeah, just like down here, you can't really see the brush marks which I'm making. I definitely need to zoom in. I will zoom in next time. And you'll see there, so when I'm going in and I'm grabbing a bit of the turquoise, I'm pulling it out onto the wet palette and just thinning it down a little bit on the brush so that I can soften these marks. So they're starting towards the bottom of the tentacle and they're working towards the top of the tentacle, and then that's leaving the kind of the main deposit of paint towards the top side of the tentacle to keep it bright towards the top. But you can see already how like that transition towards the tentacle towards the face is much brighter, and hopefully that will be drawing attention, particularly when we get the carapace painted up and highlighted up as well. It's a great face. It's a proper spooky face. He's just got a lot of detail on there and lots of recesses, so I think if you were to do this, I would probably give the whole face a coat of that turquoise and just leave the recesses out and have the shadow as turquoise, so that you can then, like I was saying, then you've got even more room for some highlights. So going back onto the carapace now, and this is the same as we started with before we put the oil wash on. This is just Mephiston red. It's such a nice red. It's such a nice red. Games Workshop do a few really nice paints, and Mephiston red is definitely one of them. But because the carapace is quite dark, you want to try and give the mid-tone some detail. So although I'm kind of going across the top of these of this kind of thigh and the carapace points with the Mephiston red, I'm also going to try and go in and just have a little bit of detail and texture running down the mid-tones of these carapace areas as well, because you can't just leave them dark. You have to have some sort of detail on there. So this is quite, you'll see that I'm pulling this red paint from the edge of the spot of paint, and even that time I was dragging it onto the wet palette as well, and that sort of thins it down even further. So this is quite thin. It's already quite a thin paint anyway. And there's me getting distracted. I just painted a bit of turquoise as well, so that was like a knuckle of a kneecap or something that clearly needed attention whilst I was painting red paint, the red carapace. It is one of the things that I do need to get better at with videos. I'm very sorry. I do kind of flit around a little bit. Like I should. One of the things that I should do is concentrate on the like this top crown carapace. Like I should just concentrate on that crown carapace, paint all that, and then turn the video off and paint everything else. And like rather than kind of flicking around, and I don't know whether it's a little bit of, okay, well I've got this mid-tone mixed, I will carry on painting all the mid-tones on all the reds, like, yeah, anyway, that's something for next video. So Mephiston red is providing a little bit of texture, and then the next highlight we are going to mix in a little bit of ice yellow with the red, and that's going to give us a We're going to be quite careful with this highlight because it's got some pink in it, and because it hasn't got pink in it, it turns the red into like a pink tone. But I wanted to push these highlights a little bit more and have just a fraction more detail on some of the areas. So you can do these as, so this is a great kind of color for scratches. You can paint in like down here. Look, there's a couple of scratches which I'm following the old brush lines that were on the model, and giving some texture to the carapace lines, and like it's almost showing the grain and the growth of the carapace. And then this is the fun part. So this is, I said earlier that these were inspired by the Alien colour scheme. So this is Golden Olive from Vallejo. It's a horrible paint. It doesn't thin very well. It doesn't go on very well. You have to thin it a little bit more than you think, a little bit more than normal. So this is probably 60% water to 40% paint. And you'll see this is one coat and you can barely see it. And then you give it another coat and it kind of pops a little bit more, and then you give it another coat and it pops just a little bit more, yeah, by the end you can almost kind of build up layers of highlight with this paint purely on its own. Now this is the same, it's the same tone. It's actually the same tone, almost identical actually. It's the same tone as the colour from the original Alien poster. So you remember the original Alien poster from 1979, there was an alien egg in space and then it had a green glow underneath it. So this is almost that tone of green, which is, I love it. It's just so eerie. It's stayed with me forever. I'm just a massive Alien fan, and it's the same tone that I actually use on my Necrons as well. It's the same green, and although my Necrons go a little bit higher because it's like an energy source, this is almost like a slimy ligament, and like almost like a mucus covered areas of the model, or like poison dripping down the talons and things like that. So this is still ice yellow as well. So not ice yellow, sorry, this is still golden olive. So you can see how much variation you can get just by building up layers and layers and layers of this, because it's not very translucent, it's not very opaque at all. It's a very translucent paint, and you can just keep building up and keep building up until it pops a little bit more, and then we're going to add just the kind of the final touches to it as well. So it's still golden olive, and you can it absolutely staggers me how this is just like still one paint, and there's so much tonal difference between all the kind of finishes that we've got here. And all I'm doing is I'm just kind of picking out, this is a bit more of a, this is where the light will be catching. It's not like there's no light source being created from this. This is just where light is being caught. So it's going to be much brighter. You can see me putting quite a chunky highlight down here because this is where the elbow is, and this should be a little bit of a lighter area in the model. So just layers and layers and layers, but hopefully you can see there that those layers do make a difference, and they do keep popping. It's the punch of the colour almost. And then this is the magic. So this is yellow green. This is more the colour, which is just brilliant. It's just an eerie kind of gooey green. It's absolutely brilliant. If you want to try and get this colour with Games Workshop paints, it's something like moot green, a little bit of white, and something like Flash Gits yellow, something like that, and you will get something that's close. And then if you keep adding Flash Gits yellow with a little bit of white, you will kind of get something similar. And then you could probably add a tiny bit of probably a tiny bit of black to get the kind of the olive green tone to start with. Yeah, it's if you want something similar to this, then those are the two paints which you just need. They're just a little bit awkward to work with, and you can see how much effort you need to go to get the punch. But I think it's worth it. It's such a cool tone. And then particularly when you're working on the head as well, you can make it like really gooey. So there's going to work on the eyes first, And this is, I'm not doing a very good job of it, but this is flooding the eye sockets with olive green. And then that will, so I'm going to try and make the eyes glow just a little bit. So we're going to have the olive green as the glow, and then the yellow, green and ivory as the actual eyeballs. But because this is thinned down, what I'm going to do as well is kind of run it into recesses as well. So you've almost got like mucus in recesses around the skull, and you can run it down the tentacles as if there's a bit of poison dripping down them and things like that. So you can add this. It really is a really nice green to kind of add into like mucus areas and goo and just all the yucky slimy bits of aliens. It's one of my favourite film franchises. So there's a lot of inspiration on quite a few of my models. So just the olive green. That's adding all that. Just adding it mainly just kind of adds little layers. I think you can see up on the tail as well. I've added a little bit of kind of that poison feel dripping down the tail as well. And then this is yellow green just for the eyeballs. And notice that I'm orientating the eyeballs in the direction of the brushstroke as well, so that we can easily get the eyeballs. And also just notice like how closely towards the end of the ferrule I'm holding the brush here. So if you want to control the brush, then you can hold it towards the end of the ferrule, and if you want larger kind of swooping freer brush strokes, then you can hold the brush further up the handle. But if you want to do eyeballs, like just hold the brush towards the cloak, like closer towards the end, like lock your hands together, and you can have complete control over, or much better control over where the brush tip is going to end up. Right, so you will have seen I brought the base on. I printed off some Tyranid like spore chimneys and like spikes and things, and I wanted, because I want all these Tyranids to have a little bit more of a more evolved, terraformed world that they're fighting on, sort of thing, rather than it being like an Imperial world with a bit of Tyranid stuff sticking out of it, sort of thing. So I wanted it to be a little bit more like fighting on a battlefield that's just further down the line of the Tyranid invasion. So I printed off the Tyranid bit. I also sculpted a rock for the base as well, and the rock was painted in that somber grey colour, and then washes of red and turquoise. So the red and the turquoise that I used on the model, I created washes of those and put blobs of thin paint all over the rock, and then highlighted it up over the top of that. And the idea for this chromatophore cloak is the same thing. Like, I want to have the cloak match the rock, because it's a chameleonic cloak, right? So it's supposed to be a camouflage cloak. It's supposed to match the rocks. So I added the same colours at the beginning, and now we're going to highlight it up and try and create that rock texture on the cloak. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to dry brush it. So we've got this is I think this is an Artopus size. Where is it? Yeah, this is an Artopus small Series D dry brush, and I've got my little dry palette down there as well. You can see whenever I'm doing like dry brushing for models like this, or for bases I'm doing, but loads of bases at the moment, I'll have like a dry palette, which is usually like just a massive old base which I've got. But there's a touch of water on the brush to keep it damp, and then I'm working the paint into the brush, keeping it very, very like worn down. Like, there's not a lot of paint on the brush at all, because I'm going over and over and over and over and over, and I'm wanting to build up this kind of dusty texture and feel and highlight and kind of blending into the rock surface underneath it that I can. So towards the bottom of the cloak, I want it to look as much like the rock as I can, and then the further up it goes, then I want it to have a little less kind of texture, if you like. So I'm focusing all this down at the bottom, and you'll see like a lot of rubbing on my thumb just to remove as much paint as I can so that it's really dusty when it's going on. And when I'm going back to the wet palette, I've got some ice yellow on the wet palette, so I'm just adding more and more little bits of ice yellow onto the mix. And then that's mixing with the somber grey that's still on the brush, so you're getting these kind of nice soft transitions and nice soft little highlights as well. And hopefully, I don't think it's too bad. I think it's kind of turned out all right. That's just a little bit more ice yellow that we need, because the ice yellow was all moved up on all used up on the wet palette. So same kind of thing. You can see how much is on the base when I'm catching it there, and this is just trying to catch the end of the cloak, bottom of the cloak, just so that it matches as closely as I can the rock underneath it, because it's a camouflage cloak, so it needs to be matching something. So I wanted to try and make it match the. Please don't do that. Drop the model on the wet palette. You can see I've got a little bit of red on the claw as well. Get rid of that, and then I drop it again. Yeah, because I'm an idiot. But yeah, so I'm trying to, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I've been successful. I'm trying to make the cloak look as much like a rock as I can, and I think, and then also kind of grounding it with the atmosphere as well, the location. So he's going to be camouflaged in the location. So it's just trying to match the rock which is already there. So let me know if you think I've managed it. And there he is. I really like him. I think he's really cool. I'm quite pleased with the cloak as well. Yes, I could have painted a little bit more of the back. I was rushing this a little bit because I had to get it done for a Warhammer community article. So the back is now painted. I promise. Yeah, there he is. I think he's really cool. I think he's come together really well. So the base is I 3D printed the Tyranid bits on the base. I sculpted the rocks. And then the little thistle tufts are from my friend Sarah at Rival Crafts. You can see her website in my description down below. I will warn you, you will spend hours on that website looking at all the cool stuff there. She's got a lot of cool stuff. So I've got some red thistle tufts, which I think work really, really well with the Tyranid terrain. And I think he's come out quite well. Now, I'm curious. I hope you've enjoyed this video in terms of this is how I paint a Deathleaper without using an airbrush. I am curious to see how I would get on using an airbrush. I'm just quite tempted in what kind of processes would change. I think I might do the Norn Emissary with an airbrush and see if we can get something close. Because also the Norn Emissary, the video you should have seen by now, has got massive lictor arms because I'm obsessed with lictors. So like the Norn Emissary should have these massive silver metallic lictor claws as well. So it should be quite cool to see if I can kind of airbrush a little bit more on the Norn lictor. That might be quite good fun. Yeah, there we go. I hope you enjoyed this video. There's more to come. I've got a number of painting videos that are pretty much finished. I just need to edit them through, and I've got a number of painting videos which I'm halfway through painting as well for you. So please drop me a like and a subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1 million subscribers, which would be great. I think I'm under 197,000 to go by now. So we're not we're not doing bad. And you can obviously find me on Instagram and Twitter at or whatever that stupid platform is called at the moment, at Chris Frossin. And I'm streaming a lot on Twitch at the moment, so I'm going to be live as of watching this video as well, I think. So I'm going to be live on Twitch this week. That's at twitch.tv at, oh my word, twitch.tv/Chris Frossin. There we go. So you can find me on there. And please drop a like and a comment. It really helps the YouTube algorithms for me. So drop a comment down below on whether you like this one and whether you're going to get the Deathleaper model yourself and what your colour scheme is. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care and keep painting. It's an absolute pleasure to do all these videos for you. So I will see you in the next one. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.